We want to talk a little bit first about your early days.
Yes.
Tell me where you were born and bring me up to, let's say, the time you left Vienna.
Well, I was born in Vienna, and my parents were not wealthy, but well-to-do. We had maids, and I had a Hebrew teacher and a gouvernante who taught me French, and she discovered that I had absolute pitch when I was very young. And then I apparently, you wouldn't believe it today, I had a nice high voice, a soprano. They wanted me to join the Sängerknaben, the Wiener Sängerknaben, but my mother did not permit it. She wanted me to have an ordinary, normal childhood because they toured all the time. But I did start playing the piano very early, and I began to sort of improvise, which was frowned upon in Vienna. The Viennese slang term for it was klimpern. And it wasn't until I was in Jerusalem that I was told that this was not an unforgivable sin, but I will come to that later. I did have piano lessons, and I was admitted to the State Academy in Vienna at the age of 13. I think I was one of the youngest students. And that was in 1937. 1938, the Nazis came, took over, and the head of the Jerusalem Conservatoire, Emil Hauser, who was the first violinist of the Budapest String Quartet, came to Vienna a few months after the German annexation, and the British High Commissioner of Palestine, Sir Arthur Walcott, was a lover of music. So he gave Hauser 100 certificates of immigration to talented music students. And I played for him, and I was lucky. And my father, who was a wise man, said, I was only 14 years old. If you can get out, go. So I went to Jerusalem at the age of 14. There I had as one of my teachers, Joseph Tull. And Joseph Tull thought I should not only study Schoenberg, Bartók, and Stravinsky, but I should study Arabic music or Middle Eastern music. So I worked for 2 years with a Jew from Baghdad, and I learned to play the oud. He never notated music, and I wrote down some of his improvisations. And one of the things that impressed me is that his improvisations always began slow and then got more excited. And somehow this affected my own writing, because my pieces very rarely begin with a bang. They always begin and then develop and so forth. I also became a accompanist at the radio station to make a living when I was about 16. And there I got all kinds of folk singers came in with Yiddish and Ladino, and they usually didn't have piano accompaniments. They brought a dirty little piece of music with a tune in it, and then they said, take it down a step or two and accompany me. And that was how I made my living for a while. That probably also had an influence me. Two of my other teachers in Jerusalem were Öden Partosh. And in counterpoint, I had Rozovsky, who taught Tanayev counterpoint. And if there was one mistake anywhere, we had to do 24 more exercises.
Rozovsky was Solomon Rozovsky?
Yes.
The son of
the Bible compilation man, yeah. So these are some of my early influences in my life.
Now let's go back to, you left Vienna before Kristallnacht or after?
Before.
Before Kristallnacht?
Yes.
Your parents stayed?
My father was hidden by a non-Jewish neighbor during Kristallnacht. And he later went to England, and he came to Palestine after the war. My mother died in England during the war.
What do you remember, or did you have, any contact with Jewish, with synagogue life, with musical life in
Yes.
Vienna?
Yes, I have a very, very... First of all, my father was Zionist, so I learned Hebrew. When I came to Israel, I could speak Hebrew.
Does the name Fuchsgelb mean anything to you?
Fuchsgelb, no.
Well, Kurt Fuchsgelb. In America, he took the name Frederick, Kurt Frederick. But his father was, I think, the head of the... It would be like in the Federation's youth division in America, something like that.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
And Fuchsgelb himself was a choir master at Seitenstättengasse.
Oh, I see. My father took me there, and I remember one particular evening there was a cousin called Herschel de Meshuggene came to Vienna.
You don't know his real name?
No. And he sort of combined opera with his chazanot and left a very, very strong impression on me.
Was this for a concert? I mean, he came. He didn't move to
He was
Vienna.
not Viennese.
He just came for to give a concert or a Shabbos.
A Shabbos service, I think.
A service, and that was it. He was known as Herschel de Meshuggene.
That's what my childhood memories. I mean, this is a good many years ago.
Well, you couldn't make that up.
No, but this is... And my father, who loved Italian opera, was so pleased that he mixed in sort of Aida-like tunes with chazones. And made a very strong impression on me. And I had a full bar mitzvah, and we were not Orthodox, but Zionist. I mean, my parents.
Was the bar mitzvah at Seitenstättengasse or?
No, but we're in the area where we live.
Do you remember which synagogue?
No, but the rabbi was Merer, and I have a picture.
I would only know who the chazan was.
No.
I don't deal with rabbis so much. I do have a printout sheet, it is rather a photocopy of a sheet of all Vienna synagogues in 1930-something, in the 30s.
Yes,
which
we're
I shall
talking
show
about
you.
the 30s.
And it gives you the name in each one, the address of each synagogue,
And
the
really,
rabbi,
you have that.
the second rabbi, the cantor, the second cantor, the telephone number, everything. I'll have to send you a copy and see if you can
I'd
pick out
love
which
to
one.
see that. I'd be interested. I have a book about the Jews of Vienna, and there's a picture of all the rabbis, and I recognize the one who was the rabbi from
There's
my
also a
bar
book
mitzvah.
on Vienna synagogues, you know.
Yes.
By somebody called Pierre Genet, who was an amateur, as I understand.
Yeah.
It's not really, but it's
Yeah.
And the district you lived in,
With the 5th.
that's not Leopold.
No. My grandparents all lived in Leopoldstadt, but my parents were sort of emancipated enough to move out of Leopoldstadt.
But what does interest me is, do you recall at all whether, I mean, in Vienna at that time, there were synagogues that were basically made up of Viennese Jews, that is to say, German-speaking Jews.
Yes.
And there were also Polish synagogues in Vienna.
Well, at my parents' house, we were not allowed. Yiddish wasn't spoken, and Viennese slang was forbidden. We had to speak Hochdeutsch.
So then...
So we were, as I said, not Orthodox, Zionist, and that is, but we learned modern Hebrew. Colloquial modern Hebrew as well is biblical. And that was a great asset to me coming to Palestine in 1938, because I went to high school and all I had to learn was the new terms for mathematics and physics and chemistry.
Where did you study Hebrew in Vienna? I mean, all from a tutor?
Private.
All private?
Private tutor, yeah.
But there wasn't a Zionist school there in Vienna like there was in Poland.
Well, there was a Chayes Gymnasium, but I didn't go to that.
What did you say? Chayes?
Chayes Gymnasium was the Jewish gymnasium in Vienna, but I went to Elisabeth Gymnasium near where we lived, and only after Hitler were we sent to a Jewish gymnasium.
So you didn't have any experience with any chazanim in Vienna? You don't remember any?
My father went high holidays, but the strongest impression is the one in the Seitenstätten.
That one time?
That one time.
But otherwise, I mean, with the Sulzer tradition or so forth in Vienna?
No, as a child I was not into this.
Or choirs, you didn't sing in any synagogue choir, things like that? Your musical education was also private, or?
Until I got to the State Academy. There I had Ebenstein was my piano professor. And the people often ask me whether Schoenberg's name was not mentioned at the Academy in Vienna. And of course not. Webern wasn't even known.
Was it the case? Yeah, Weber wouldn't know. I mean, was that the period when Schoenberg was more associated with Berlin?
But he was in Berlin.
Yeah.
But many people who don't know that say you went to Vienna in the 30s, so you must have...
The Viennese claim everybody. You know that you heard that famous saying that only the Austrians, I have to think about this now, only the Austrians could make Hitler German and Beethoven Viennese.
Very good.
Good.
Huh? Very good. No. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
No.
Did you know Chayes there at all? People
No.
like that? Or
No.
some of the other people who were in Vienna?
No.
There was a Professor Wolf, a voice professor there. That's probably before that.
Before.
Probably
No. I mean, I was a child. I mean,
Yeah.
13
Yeah.
My father loved the opera, and I went with him. And
I'm thinking of the people who went to Palestine. Stuchevsky.
Stefsky knew very well.
He came from Vienna, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jerusalem was quite a different world for me. And that's where I spent my really formative years, 14 to 23.
Well, now, you were in Palestine until what year?
47.
Till 47.
I was in the British Royal Air Force during World War II for 3 years, but I didn't do any fighting because I was in North Africa and I played on a German court piano, and the senior officer heard it. And after that, I spent my military service giving concerts.
When did it develop that composition was your...
Joseph Tal. I wrote about that in my autobiography, which I may let you see later, called Continuo Life in Music. I was improvising, which in Vienna had been forbidden. And Tal heard me, and he said, "What is this you're playing?" Because I was his piano student. And he says, "I don't know."
Because you came to Tal to study piano.
To piano.
Stop.
He was my piano teacher, yes.
Then how did they get to it?
And then he heard me improvise. He said, and they asked me, "What is that you are playing?" I said, "I have no idea. I'm just fooling around." So he encouraged me to improvise, but he also gave me a lecture about the difference between improvisation and composition. And then he began to encourage me to write down my improvisations. That is how it really began. And he also really introduced me. In Vienna, I had not heard anything later than Bruckner. And Tal introduced me to Schoenberg, Bartók, Stravinsky, and what was then the new music of the 30s and 40s.
The new music in Europe or in Palestine?
Palestine was, very European. Aside from that Arab Jew from Baghdad I worked with, all my other teachers were either German or Russian.
And you probably...
Or Hungarian, Bartos was
yeah.
Hungarian, but all European. And we studied counterpoint and harmony and so forth.
Was Bartos Hungarian or Romanian?
Bartos was Hungarian.
Hungarian.
Yeah.
And you came probably into contact with, after a few more years, with many of the German musical refugees.
Oh, yes.
that made
And then the orchestra played my music and the radio played my music and
Obermann.
then in 40s, but I never finished my musical education. So in 1947, the British government gave me a scholarship because I had served in the Royal Air Force. And I was supposed to go to London, but there were no vacancies at the Royal Academy. So I was given a choice between Paris and New York. And I chose New York. And the Juilliard gave me a full scholarship. And when I came to Juilliard, I took my first year examinations, then the second year examinations, then the third year examinations, and then the fourth year examinations. So I graduated from Juilliard the day I entered. So they put me into postgraduate, and after 1 year they offered me a teaching fellowship, and after 2 years a faculty appointment. At that time I went back to Israel and was desperately looking for a job. There wasn't one. So I came back to Juilliard, and in a way that made me decide that I was going to live in America from this point on.
Had Tal been able to find you a position in Israel?
Apparently not.
You would have, but if you had, you might have stayed.
I would have
By that
stayed.
time was what, about 1951?
Yes, exactly. 53 was the last. Yeah.
And what was musical life like there up until, let's say, up until 47? I mean,
Well, the orchestra was wonderful. It was then called the Palestine Orchestra. The Radio Jerusalem had an orchestra in which I made my professional debut as a percussionist. Because Tal said to me, you will not make music, you will not make a living with the music you write. And he says, and you don't like to practice the piano, you need to learn an orchestral instrument. So they looked at my teeth, and my teeth were bad, so they ruled out all the woodwinds. So he said, what about percussion? So I made my professional debut. That means the first time I ever got paid for making music, for playing percussion in Ravel's Bolero. And I didn't get to play the drums roll, I got to play the 6 cymbal beats at the end in an outdoor concert. And then Tal made me pick up the harp as an instrument. And I played harp in the Jerusalem Orchestra and survived only because most of the conductors didn't know whether I was really playing all the notes or not. And I don't usually speak about my brief harpist life, but then I made my living also as an accompanist at the radio station, because it was clear Tal was right that I couldn't make enough money writing music.
there are archives. Have you ever investigated? There are archives with, even though those were live in those days for the radio, right? You didn't record it.
No, it was live music.
It was live, but
yeah.
there are recordings because they did what's called air checks.
Yes.
And I've been trying to get at those archives. It's conceivable it goes back all the way to what you're talking about.
Possibly.
We have thousands and thousands of recordings of the live broadcasts.
Really, of the Palestine Broadcasting
Yes, the
Service?
Broadcasting
Who has them?
Authority in Kol Yisrael.
Palestine,
But they have no index to them. They have no organization, and it's crazy. We offered to pay. We said because it's very what.
Yeah.
We will pay somebody in Israel, a student, somebody, graduate student, to go and do but it's a political thing, and they won't let anybody, and it could be that's what you're talking about.
Possibly.
Who were some of the singers? Do you remember any of the singers, like Bracha Sfira?
Oh, yes, I played with Bracha Sfira. I did not live with her as all the other composers did. But I did play for her once or twice. Oh, yeah.
And
Shlomo Weissfisch, these are all, yeah.
I'm trying to say, I mean, in those days there were some great people who were combining.
Yes, and there was a lot of musical activities. The museum in Tel Aviv had concerts where I played, and it was very active.
So what would you say, what was your first important piece, the first performance? Was it in Israel?
No, it was with the Palestine Orchestra. It was called Fantasy for Strings. It had a solo trio, and George Singer conducted it. I don't know if his name has crept up. And the premiere was in Tel Aviv, and this was in 47. And there was a lot of Jewish anti-British fighting going on. And the day of the concert, the British declared a curfew, and I couldn't go to Tel Aviv to hear my own piece. But that was the first major performance I had. And the critic was Max Brod, the friend of Kafka's. And I have a review from Max Brod, which I cherish very much, in which he says, Mr. Starker creates from the depth of his soul. Max Brod. I never met him either. And having had lots of bad reviews ever since, I sort of cherish one of the good ones. That was my first major concert, I would say. Then I toured with a violinist named Zvi Zeitlin. And I wrote a sonata for him, and we played that in many.
This was in Palestine?
Yes.
Isn't he at Eastman?
He's at Eastman, yeah.
That's
about it between.
And then, so now you started to teach at Juilliard.
Then I came to marry at Juilliard, yeah.
And how long did you teach there?
I taught at Juilliard until 74.
A long time.
Yeah.
So you were there when I was there.
Were you there?
Yeah, piano.
With whom did you study?
Marcus.
Oh, did you really? What years were you there?
I was there simultaneous to Columbia, so that was 64 to 68.
By that time I was already at Brooklyn College and kept only one class at Juilliard.
Yeah, because I remember...
I joined Brooklyn College in 63. 64 I was in Europe, and I kept one class at Juilliard. I thought I would, but later I dropped it.
The other people there, I mean, Sessions was still teaching there,
Oh, yeah.
and Weiskall.
Oh yes, Weiskall and I were know each other all the way.
Of course.
Weiskall also left Juilliard.
He left.
And you see, I mean, the City University was frankly a much better employer.
Well, of course.
Than Juilliard.
And security and all that.
Security and pension and everything. Juilliard had nothing.
Had nothing, yeah. It was
You taught, and then you went home.
Yeah.
Juilliard was important for people who needed private students, because many people, when they needed to teach a called Juilliard, and while Juilliard paid badly, you could demand much more in private lessons. But for somebody like me, it made more sense to teach at the city.
Giannini was there.
Oh, yes.
He was already dead by, I think, 64.
Yeah, but he was there when I was in my early years, yeah.
And Persichetti, of course.
Oh, yeah.
The whole time.
Yeah. He and I used to have a drink after teaching, sometimes in the late afternoon. He was a nice man.
Yeah, very nice. And the Diamond didn't come till later, or was he?
Diamond came much later.
He came much later, yeah.
But Weiskall was there. He also left and went to Queen's College.
Yeah. There was one evening of two one-act operas of faculty, one Weiskall and one Sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was sometime in the mid-65, 66, something like this.
But my Jewishness and my touch with Israel got me, first of all, Martha Graham got interested when she did her Samson. She asked for me as a composer. And when Herbert Ross did a Dybbuk with Nora Kay, he asked me to write the music for it.
Now tell me about the Dybbuk briefly, because we have the score for that. I've looked at the score.
You have?
Yep.
It was not a success in Berlin, but Nora Kay was wonderful in it.
This music is for. What is it? Music for the ballet?
I later made a suite out of it, which has been played. Sergio Commissiona did it in Baltimore, and a few other people did. But it was an evening length. Herbert Ross had heard my Ariel and liked it. And he later got me to write that music for a Broadway show for him. And once I met him on 57th Street, and he said, "Don't you want to write movies for me?" And I said, "No." And I must also tell you that when I graduated from Juilliard in 1949, NBC offered me a job to become a staff writer for their background music, and I declined that also. But I thought I would talk a little bit about works of a Jewish character.
I wanted to start with the Dybbuk.
Yeah.
So the origin of that was for as a ballet.
Yes.
As a commission.
It was a commissioned ballet. It was called Ballet of Two Worlds. It was a mixture of Americans and Europeans. It was financially, it went bankrupt or something of that kind. The sets fell apart on the stage.
How did you come upon the Dybbuk as a...
Herbert chose it.
I see.
As a composer, you don't choose the subject. And when Martha wanted to do Samson, Martha Graham I'm speaking about, and when we first met, she said to me, "This will be my first ballet about a male figure, and I won't be in it." And I wrote my music, and then she became Delilah, and she was all over it, of course. But as a composer, you don't, opera is a different story, but dance, you don't choose the subject. And Anna Sokolov, I did an Esther for her, for CBS.
Esther?
Yeah, for CBS television.
That was a live broadcast?
Yeah, in those days there was a woman called Pamela Eilert who did religious Sunday morning broadcasts. The program was called Lamp Unto My Feet. And I did it on a Sokolov Esther for
It
that.
was ABC, I think, wasn't it?
No, CBS.
CBS, yeah.
And, but to come back to the Dybbuk, he chose the Dybbuk. And Nora Kay was wonderful.
Now, up to that time, you hadn't written any work of Jewish connection,
yes.
had you?
When I was a student at Juilliard, I wrote Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, and everybody said at your age you should write Shira Shirim, you should write the Song of Songs. What, at 27 you're interested in vanities or vanity? It was a very difficult work, it had very few performances. And the next choral work I wrote was Ariel in
Now, before
59.
we talk about Ariel, the Kohelet is a choral work.
It's a choral work. It has very few performances.
How long is it?
It's enormously difficult,
It
about
is
half an hour, yeah.
It's very difficult.
It needs a good professional chorus.
Was to Ariel. So, I mean, for a long time, I associated the name.
Well, that still gets done. It was done in Canada again last year. That seems to have a
Would you
life,
say that that's one of your best known, if maybe not, maybe your best known piece?
perhaps.
I think.
Yeah.
If I had to.
It was also sung by many non-Jewish choruses, and it had a long life.
Now, Ariel, I forget if it's called Ariel or the Vision of Ariel.
No, it's called Ariel Visions of Isaiah.
Visions of Isaiah, that's it.
Yeah, dates from 59.
That's chorus.
And soloists.
And so
The recording
soloists.
is very good. It has Roberta Peters in the soprano. It's still available.
And orchestra.
Abraham Kaplan conducts it.
That's a full orchestra.
Oh, yeah.
Double wind or more.
Double win, yeah. It's on the CRI label, American Masters,
Right,
whatever the series is called. Yeah.
No, I have it, yeah.
Yeah.
How did you come to do that piece?
Harold Axe commissioned it for the Interracial Fellowship Chorus. That was a chorus of 200 voices. They didn't audition and they didn't have to read music. So I wrote a piece in which the choral parts are really relatively simple, and whatever drama or dissonance I needed was in the orchestra. And that may have something to do with the work's success, because difficult choral pieces don't make it, so to speak. And then I have the Mizmor David, which somebody from Milken called me about.
That's what I want to talk to you about.
And there I have a relatively easy ones.
Now, tell me about those pieces. First place, how did,
They were commissioned by the Hebrew Art School for the 10th anniversary. And they were first performed by a national Jewish chorale, which was Matthew Lazar, Jacobson, and a woman whose name doesn't come to me at the moment, from Washington.
Elaine, I can't think of her name.
So that each movement is dedicated to one of them. And two of them are quite easy to sing and do very well in terms of...
She has, there's this, the chorus is called Zemer Chai,
Demachai, that's right.
which is actually, it's really
Do they
quite
still
good.
exist?
Yes, as a matter of fact, as far as I'm concerned, it's far superior to the Boston Zamir or the...
Really?
Yeah. I'm not sure she knows exactly. She kind of doesn't have a handle on... She doesn't know as much about Judaic music or anything as they do.
I see.
But the chorus is actually better. For one thing, they sing everything from memory.
They do.
I mean, they're not singing oratorios with symphony orchestra they need.
Yeah.
They never, when they give a concert, everything is from memory, which I as a conductor appreciate, because there's nothing like that for choral music.
Yeah.
It would be from memory.
But that's what I have done lately quite a bit of, which is Hebrew and English.
Now this piece is, so it's 4-part.
It's 4-part, but the opening one is really 2-part, and that's the one that everybody sings.
But is the rest of it 4-part?
It's 4-part,
And
yeah.
do we have it? Do we have the whole?
No, it has never been recorded.
With regard to the Mizmorim, is it?
Mizmor David.
Mizmor David.
Yeah,
What are the texts? Are they psalm texts?
all sound texts, yeah.
And the accompaniment?
Violin, cello, and harp.
Now, you started to tell me the first one is only 2-part.
Yeah.
The two SS, men and women? Or?
No, either anything you want, high and low.
But after that, does it ever get 4-part?
Yes.
I'll tell you why I'm asking in a moment. But
All the others are 4 parts. One is in English.
The trouble is that that as a sample, I took a look only at the first one, or somebody showed me only the first one.
I see. So
I
you
said,
thought
well,
it
this
was
is all
all...
two-part, and I'll tell you why it's important, because we're going to be doing a recording with the Vienna choir boys, with the Sängerknaben. The Sängerknaben, of course, is either two-part or it's treble voices.
Treble voices.
However, there is also the chorus vienensis.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't even know about it in America.
No, I don't.
And I have to confess, I didn't know about it until recently either.
Mm-hmm.
The chorus vienensis is the alumni of the Sängerknaben up to age 60.
How nice.
It's a big chorus
Mm-hmm.
of TTBB.
Yeah.
And there is a wonderful CD of them that I have. I should make some copies. I mean, it's a commercial CD, but you can't buy it here so easily.
Yeah.
Of the Schubert, of the Manachor, things with brass. You know, that all the Schubert brass.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic chorus.
Really?
So I made the following proposition to them. I said, look, let's make 2 CDs. Let's make one CD with the Sängerknaben.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Stamm with the Sängerknaben piece. And we do another CD where we do part male choir things. I haven't yet figured what, because they're not going to be able to do chazanut. They'll never get this flavor, the style, unless they let me conduct it, and then they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
But the other thing was, how about some SATB combining the chorus vienensis and the Sängerknaben?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought this might be...
The fourth one is a Hallelujah. That would sound very nice.
Okay.
Zamir sings that too, by the way.
Fine.
If you want to do, I don't know what your terms are with Zamir.
It's fine, but they're not, I mean...
They're a little pop now, I think.
They're not so great, and when you're talking about... You mean Boston or... the
Boston,
Oh, it's okay, but when you're talking about the Vienna chorus
Let's
and
do that, yeah.
Zamir, it's like talking about, you know...
The 4 pieces are
McDonald's
totally
and
separate,
Vitesse,
by the way. They're not just set.
But we could do them. I think it would be very interesting because of the connection to Wien.
Yes.
And...
But I have 2 pieces for children's chorus.
What are the...
Both by Transcontinental. One I can give you because it has just come out. The other one is Hine Matov.
I have the Matov.
Oh, you have that?
I have the Matov. And the other one, what's the other one?
It's Haftar.
Yeah.
And that is my attitude of first in Hebrew, then in English. And in both of them I included women. It is Shevet Achim ve'achayot, and the same I did in Ve'ahavta. Both they were written for Rodef Shalom in New York, Canterbury Run. And he said, don't exclude half of mankind. So women are in it. There may be objection.
What, you mean singing?
Yeah. No, but I mean, I changed the text.
You can do what you want. I mean, you can write a new text. I mean, it's fine.
And the English is also my translation. So.
Yeah. Anyhow, nowadays, you know what they say there. I don't know about.
But
this,
I would be personally touched if the Vienna.
They don't say Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov. They say Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Yaakov, ve'Elohei Sarah, ve'Elohei Rivka. I mean, it's silly. But the thing is that I'm looking for a piece that would be the best piece for the combination. And
the fourth one, the Hallelujah, the Thanksgiving.
the Mizmor, yeah.
So
what other choral works do you have that might?
I have one called Proverbs for a Son.
SATB.
SATB.
In what language?
English with a few Hebrew words in it. All from the book of Proverbs.
Do you have anything that's all in Hebrew for Vienna?
For the big chorus?
Yeah.
How good are they?
Very good.
I'll let you look at Kohelet. If they want to try that. It can be done.
Well, is Kohelet divisible into sections?
It's in 6 movements.
And the whole thing takes half an hour?
Yeah.
Is it make sense to do 1 or 2 movements?
Yes.
Show me Kohelet. This might be interesting. We'll let them choose.
Yeah.
They have a new conductor now. And by the way, you know who the conductor is of the Sängerknaben?
No.
It's very funny. Because they had a woman, believe it or not, the first time in the history that a woman even set foot anywhere in the complex of buildings.
No.
And they fired her right away because it was too much flack from the old guard.
I see.
And this got a tremendous the big debate and the in the end, bad publicity for them. Because, you know, the Vienna Philharmonic to this day,
I know that.
and that's all the guy could think to write about. So they engaged, while I was there, they just that week engaged Barlach. Now, Barlach is also, you know who I'm talking?
I've heard the name.
He is the chorus master at Bayreuth.
Oh, really?
And he's going to do Jewish music.
That's wonderful.
He's about 70.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they've just, but because the question even came up whether we shouldn't say, how about the Bayreuth Festival men's chorus doing something here? And I don't know. I think it's a little bit much.
Yeah.
But the thing is, somebody asked me about Barlach, and they said, non-Jew. They said, look, are you sure that this is going to be okay? Because there is a film. And they showed me the film of him shaking hands with Hitler when he was about 6 years old, and because he was at Strauss's home.
I see.
But of course, I mean, now the thing is, Kohelet, I think, might be interesting.
Some of it, yeah.
What about synagogue music?
Well, I have a service.
That's what I want to know.
Which Transcontinental has.
It
was written for Potterman way back, a long time ago.
Do you remember what year?
No, I could look it up in the computer. 50s, in the 50s, yeah. And I had then the idea that I wanted at least 4 movements for congregational singing. So they are unison.
Of just those 4 prayers?
Those 4. And Transcontinental sells them separately as sheet music. But there's a nice hashkivenu in there which could be done. I would say let them show you the service. It's not a complete service, because I had the notion then of combining congregation. I had the music distributed to the congregation. To the congregation, but it didn't work.
Because they can't read music.
I don't know. It didn't work. But Transcontinental sells it as separate pieces. So it's not a service, really.
So I have to ask for hashkivenu or for...
Or let her show you the score and then choose. There are a few pure Hebrew.
But that was one of their annual new music services. So Potterman sang it, which means that the range is sort of nicht daher, nicht dahin.
Well, not higher than G, I think. G was his highest note.
Yeah, on a good day. It's sort of neither baritone nor tenor. It's sort of in between. Almost all the commissions for Potterman, and I never know who. Even the best intentions. I mean, I never know who to invite, because a real tenor doesn't want to do a lot of these, and yet it's kind of a nice lyric baritone in most of the, whether David Diamond or any of those commissions. Gideon of them. Very few of them exploit either range, because he was not.
Yeah, but yet he commissioned all these pieces.
Oh, he did a phenomenal thing.
Yeah.
I mean, he left 2 great legacies. This was one, although I'm sorry to say this is gone now, you know.
Yeah.
They're not even doing the new music service anymore.
They're not, yeah.
No, so completely gone. And the other legacy, of course, was building the school, the cantorial school, which was, without Potterman, there would be no school. Yeah. Potterman did it single-handedly, whatever the...
So you're using Abe Kaplan. I think that's nice.
A few movements of his, the piece that he wrote for Dayton, Ohio, for the children's choir. It's called Psalms of Abraham, he called it. It's also Psalms in Hebrew. Yeah. 3-part children. Mm-hmm. Look, it's very simple. In fact, it's very simple. Let's put it that way. Yeah. It doesn't modulate. Okay. It's very, whatever it is. But it has. There are a couple of things there. I wouldn't do it if we didn't have the Sängerknaben.
I see.
But it's just it's right for them, because they'll make something out of it. Yeah. You see. And now there's another piece. That's the only synagogue service that you wrote.
Yes.
Okay. There was a piece that we recorded, I think.
Nishmat Adam.
No, that's 2. That's 1.
You recorded the orchestral version. I have since made a chamber version, which has also been recorded.
Is Nishmat Adam strictly instrumental piece?
No, that is for soprano, baritone, and narrator.
That's the one that Nathan Lamb was narrating.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's another pice, much.
Oh, a little elegy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a nice piece.
Yeah, I like that. Tell me about that piece.
Well, that gets played a great deal.
It does.
It exists in a version for violin, for clarinet, for viola. It gets played by a lot of people.
I don't remember viola or violin, actually.
I think it's violin you
Violin,
recorded it.
And it's a small orchestra? if I
Just
recall?
strings.
It's a string orchestra.
Just strings, yeah. No, that gets done a lot.
Now, this is a pretty good recording.
That was commissioned by the children of survivors of Holocaust for Giora Feidman, who played the premiere at Carnegie Hall.
With the string orchestra?
With string orchestra. And everybody else has played it since, but I don't know if he still exists or not.
Who?
Feidman.
Of course he exists.
He does.
He's making fortunes of money, but you know where?
Where?
In Germany.
In Germany, yeah.
In Germany today, in Berlin, if you announce in the paper a Jewish concert,
It's Feidman.
no, first place it's likely to be Feidman, but second place you could announce a concert of 5 cantors and choir, a Chazonis concert, and you will sell 2,000 seats in 3 days, and there won't be Jews in the audience. Maybe
Really? What is that? How do you explain it?
there's a fascination
Okay.
with that. I'm not sure I like it because it's a little bit macabre. It's a
I
little
think
bit.
so.
It's a little bit. I mean, the people who go are well intentioned. I mean, they're fascinated with this, with Jewish culture. You
Yeah.
know? There are klezmer bands who aren't Jews all
Really?
over Germany. There's a guy named Manfred Lem, singing, who's Polish, singing Yiddish song recitals all over. There's nobody else to do it.
Yeah.
But in any case,
I
that
have a tape of Feidman playing the
You do?
Carnegie. Yeah, but we couldn't use that.
no, he'd never.
I don't know unless you. I have a simple cassette tape of the Carnegie Hall.
No, he wouldn't care, but the sonic quality wouldn't be
No.
good. The elegy, though, I think works very well on violin.
Oh yes, and it's a nice recording.
This is a very good recording.
Very good recording.
Yeah. Who conducted? I don't remember.
Don't remember. I wasn't there. I mean, that was.
Oh, you weren't there. You
no,
weren't there.
no.
What do you have in the works? Now, what are you working on now?
At the moment, I've finished a piece for flute, violin, viola, and cello for Paula Robeson. And then I have a commission for a piece for carillon,
For who?
bells. It was played, I shot a short piece which was played at the inauguration of Governor Pataki. So they love me, so they've now commissioned me to write another piece for them.
For who?
The Albany, the carillon of Albany.
Oh, I see. And
And I'm going to do it, since you asked me.
yeah.
But the flute piece is more substantial.
Any choral works coming up?
I did a one for New England, for Joshua Jacobson's non-Jewish
Oh, the Northeastern.
Northeastern, and they
University.
combined with the New England Conservatory. And the Song of Joy is text by Whitman.
Mm-hmm.
But you should look into the Proverbs for a Son.
Yes, the Proverbs for
And,
Sun. Is that transcontinental? No. Proverbs.
Yes,
who
it's
published it? It
transcontinental.
is transcontinental.
Transcontinental. And that calls for oboe, guitar, and bass.
String bass.
Yeah, was commissioned by the 92nd Street Y in New York for their chorus, Amy Kaiser.
What happened to her? She went to
She went to St.
St.
Louis,
Louis.
Missouri. Yeah.
Where? To the university?
The orchestra there, I think.
Orchestra?
I don't know.
Not the symphony, no.
I've not heard from her.
No, I know she's not with the
Sing.
symphony, of course, but...
But you could try that with the Goyish chorus if you wanted to.
Well, I think we should show it to the Sängerknaben. I think the whole idea would be very interesting to do a couple of composers who came from Vienna. There's a connection there. First play. They're not requiring it. I'm saying that it would be interesting.
Why don't we do that with the Viennese chorus, the full-size chorus? Oh, they're all
That's
men.
what I mean. No, we have 3 possibilities.
You could combine the boys and the men.
Right.
Look at the Proverbs.
I'm going to look at it.
It
First
is
place-
recorded,
first
by
place,
the
if
way.
it is recorded?
It's recorded by a Boston chorus on a transcontinental recording.
Transcontinental recording?
I have one copy of it. I'll show it to you. Together with the chamber version of Nishmat Adam.
It probably needs to be
The
recorded again.
New England Conservatory of Music, one of those courses.
Well, I have to take a look and see.
Yeah,
But if it's
but look at the music, it's
Yeah.
better.
because that would be an interesting thing. If we do that, then we'll be able to get a broadcast in Vienna too. You see,
That I would be very much interested in.
and that's how we'll work it.
Yeah.
I can think of. I'm trying to think of which composers came from Vienna to become American composers.
A man named Seisel did.
Zeisel, we have his.
He's on the CD with my trio from the Amber Trio.
We're gonna do his Requiem Ebraico.
Mm-hmm.
Schoenberg,
For that.
but we're not gonna do that with the Sängerknaben. But there are people like Julius Chayes, for example.
Yes.
I'm trying to think who else. I know Chayes is, well, we're recording some things of Chayes. I'm
Yeah.
doing his Adarim
Mhm.
with the tenor and orchestra,
Yeah.
and some of his synagogue music.
Tell me, how near completion are you, or is this going to go on and on and on?
No, can't go on and on and on.
In
Our
5
target
years
date-
ago, we were
oh, no, no.
2000 is the target.
In target date is beginning of the year 2001.
Oh, it is.
That's the
Yeah.
target date for the first CD to be able to come out. You see.
Yeah.
But then they will come out. They probably won't come out all the same time. They'll probably come out
Sure. Yeah.
one a month or
But
one every
this
6 weeks.
Viennese
Or 2 a month.
project interests me greatly.
Have you ever been asked to write anything for Chazanut, for a cantor?
Not since Paterman.
Since Perlman, yeah.
I wrote another thing for Paterman, and I wrote something for Helfman.
Tell me about that. Do you know Helfman?
Well, I knew him,
Yeah.
but I don't think I even kept the music. This dates from the early 50s.
What was it?
I mean, bar something to do with the desert.
You knew Helfman in the New York period before
Yeah.
he went to California.
Yeah. And I wrote another piece for Paterman. There is another Hebrew piece of mine, which I also wrote for Paterman. And I will later give you the title, it just escapes me at the moment. It was published by Mercury Music there. And it's still in print even, with Theodore Presser. A short piece,
That could be very useful.
which I wrote for Paterman. Lately I have been writing English, Whitman and...
Well, there's nothing wrong with Whitman.
No, I came to him late in life, but I love him.
Our friend Bob Strasberg,
Yeah,
in Los Angeles,
yeah,
is deeply involved with Whitman. I mean, he wrote,
Yeah.
you know about all his work with Whitman texts and all that. I don't know whatever came of it.
Somebody's writing a book now about all the settings of Whitman that have been done. It's a long list,
Yeah,
a very long list. Many European composers, English composers have set Whitman.
the funny thing is that he's one of the only American poets known in England. I suppose as we know, our school children, even the most educated of them, really don't know anything about English history. The English, the best, it's even more so. I mean, I'm talking about people in the finest schools. And I remember having this discussion with someone who, she had been very highly educated with the white glove routine in school, everything. And they know nothing about American poets.
But they know it.
Except Whitman?
Emily Dickinson, maybe.
No, that's way too. No, they never heard of any of the others. None of any era. The only other one, this is going to be fun, it was Robert Frost, and there's only one reason, and she admitted to me why. Because of the Kennedy inauguration.
I see.
If it hadn't been for that,
Yeah.
and so then everyone was running out and buying Robert Frost. But Whitman is,
Yeah.
I wonder if it's been said in Hebrew.
When I get a commission for a choral work, I often look at Whitman first.
Yeah.
I wrote The Mystic Trumpeter. I've done quite a bit of Whitman.
I'm looking at the piano there, and I see the Wehrhaupt.
It just came out. I will give you a copy. That is written for SA. I mean,
Yeah.
That-
Well, my general feeling is it might be, the Sängerknaben, it's a shame to do things with them that are too simple because we have other choruses to conduct children's choruses.
Simple, yeah.
That might be in London we have some recordings with some children's choruses. Very fine.
Yeah.
But even one of a Jewish children's
The man on the telephone, what is his name?
Richard, or Lee.
Lee. He told me that you have a chorus in Mississippi.
Yes, we're going there in a few days.
That Sam Adler's
Yeah.
former student.
Right. We're probably doing something next year. I don't know what date, though. It just came up in the last few days, in Texas.
No, I'm more interested in Vienna than in Texas.
Vienna. No, for this is the perfect...
There is an American children's chorus sang Hine Matov in Vienna just last month.
From where?
From here. Woodstock Youth Chorale.
Yeah?
Has just been to Austria.
How good are they?
I haven't heard them. Do you mean you might record them?
No, I mean, they were... No, I would have heard of them if they were really good.
Yeah, no.
I don't know of any American children's choir that's really first-rate.
There's a Nunez, a man who wrote me, who has the New York City Children's Chorus.
I haven't heard it, but my gut feeling is that if you understand what I mean, it's more sociological than musical.
Yeah.
The only serious chorus in the United States, of which I know, is the American Boy Choir in Princeton.
Uh-huh.
It's the only one. Whereas, in London, you have two huge ones that are boys and girls, to say nothing of all the boy choirs. Really, we have very serious choruses. I mean, Benjamin Britten wrote for them all the time. Mm-hmm. Let's talk just for a moment about your own feelings about what Judaic-related music means, or how it's connected, or what prompts one to broach the subject. And I'll tell you why. I'll preface it with this, because I'm not making this up. It just so happens that I have an old friend in Vienna who's Viennese and is a musician, a professional pianist, and not Jewish at all. And she took a look at this whole thing and said to me, "What? I don't understand. You want to separate out Jewish things from... You want to do the opposite of what you always claimed, what is the point of all this? Music is international. There should be no separation." So how would you respond to that? This was sitting in the lobby of a hotel in Vienna.
All right. When I went with Judy Eisenstein to Jerusalem in '78 on the World Congress on Jewish Music, I was asked to define it. I have later written it in an article which they printed in the Reconstructionist magazine. And I said there are 4 elements: heredity, upbringing, language, and intent. Heredity we can do nothing about. Upbringing, obviously, what we heard in our childhood and our youth. That is where mine comes from, clearly. Both the Herschel, the Meshuggah, and what I heard in Jerusalem. Now, language is very important. If you take for instance, words like Adam, Michael, in Hebrew it's Adam, Michael. In English it's Adam and Michael. English is a syncopated language. Hebrew is not. Hebrew tends to go towards the last syllable in words. That affects the music. So that is language. I write different music when I write set Hebrew texts to when I set English texts. And the last one is the most difficult to define, and that is intent. When I wrote the Dybbuk, for instance, I tried to have a klezmer kind of sound with the clarinet and the bass and the drum, the instruments. And I like to invent melodic. I never used any folk tunes until in a moment who taught me not to do that. Darius Milhaud. When I was a student in Tangle, well, that's a slight digression, but it's worth telling. The two teachers were Copeland and Milhaud. And I was a foreigner then. The foreigners studied with Copeland and the Americans with Milhaud. But I went to see Milhaud several times because I liked him. He also wrote in ink, by the way, which impressed me no end. And he said, I always invent my own folk tunes. I never use any. That impressed me terribly. I was very young and I have kept it. I've always invented my folk tunes when I needed to. So intent, when you write a Dybbuk, you're looking for the chazonische element in the melodies. And when you set Walt Whitman, you don't. So there is a difference. And when I wrote my Violin Concerto for Itzak Perlman, I looked for things that he would immediately understand, because it is Middle Eastern. In the second movement, is the oi, oi, sort of glissandi from above and below into one note, which is very much what the Arabic musicians do on the oud. And he immediately understood that. I didn't have to explain it to him. So in the program notes, I wrote that I tried to draw on that, which is our heritage in common. So I think intent is the most, in my case, because I have written works which, for instance, my Klezmer, the clarinet piece, which I also wrote for Feidman, which others have recorded, I really try to draw on that. And when I said Walt Whitman, or I have just been commissioned, for your information, to write a piece for the West Point Band to celebrate their bicentennial. And I have written a fantasy of when Johnny comes marching home. Obviously, this has nothing to do with Hebrew or anything of the kind. And there I did use an existing tune, because West Point, I wanted a song that is associated with the military. So to summarize it, the subject matter on hand determines, in my case, whether I bring to the foreground my Jewish inheritance or my universal one, let's call it that.
I think that's a very good answer. Mainly because I agree with you.
Good.
Yeah, I think intent is the, well.
I repeat, you can't do anything about heredity.
No, but, well, you can rebel against it, or try to ignore it, and therefore not write any.
Yeah.
And I agree about language very much. I hear you saying that then you would raise serious questions about the idea of Italian of Verdi in English then, if you say you write different music for Hebrew as opposed to English.
Well, I think opera should be sung in the language it was written, I do.
Yeah, so that's what I
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, naturally, different things are going to come to mind and exceptions, but...
I mean, Hungarian is also a syncopated language, right? Yeah. And Italian is not. But, go on.
My general question always is, and you answer it with this one word, language, I think that anything that is legitimately in Hebrew, when I say legitimately, I'm not talking about writing a commercial rock song in Hebrew, because that's something else, even by an Israeli.
Yeah.
But poetry.
Yeah.
A Walt Whitman type poet, if there were, who is Israeli, to me it already is Judaic, because Hebrew is a Jewish language.
Well, yeah, I wrote in my Jerusalem days, I wrote Leah Goldberg songs.
Yeah.
And that was Hebrew.
I would consider that Jewish.
I remember it.
The Violin Concerto,
yeah,
is called, I mean, is that Judaically related?
Yes.
In the way that you say it, or more than that?
The way, that and the piece I wrote for Stephen Honigberg, maybe that should interest you. It's called Song of Solitude. He recorded it he premiered it at the Holocaust Museum in Washington.
Oh, I know. I think
he plays it beautifully. It's about 9 minutes long, and I would love for him to record it.
What's it called?
Song of Solitude.
What's it for cello?
That for cello and accompaniment.
Solo cello. Honigberg plays it well?
Yeah, and that has what I would call my instrumental Jewish.
Well, but you see there, the intent, whether it does or not, the intent comes into play, doesn't it? You wrote it.
I knew it would be premiered at the Holocaust Museum. But again, I didn't use any folk tones.
No, you don't have to use pre-existing material. It could be a tone row. It could be anything you want. Intent. That's my general position. The Violin Concerto, though, is that?
It was written for Itzak Perlman, and both his technical prowess, his unbelievably sweet tone, and the fact that he's Israeli.
But I mean, is there an attempt to be to relate in some way, or is it more directly? I mean, Song of Solitude is direct.
Yes. Then I have a piece, my little piano pieces, which I played a lot of 3 Israeli sketches.
Yeah. No, but I want to clarify to myself for a reason. The Violin Concerto it's called Violin Concerto.
That's Violin Concerto.
And there's not. If you were writing program notes for it, if I would hear it in a concert, would it be described in relationship to Judaic music? We could say that it qualifies as music of Jewish experience, or no, or is it international?
Jewish experience, perhaps, yeah.
Is it recorded?
Yes, he recorded it with the Boston Symphony.
Perlman recorded it.
Yeah, it's no longer available, but he did record it with Sergio Zauer.
You see, for example, let's take the Castelnuovo Tedesco Violin Concerto.
Yeah.
That is very specifically, he calls it, it's three different, he's called it the prophets. It's a biblical, you see, and his intent is to be programmatic.
But my intent was to write something for Itzak Perlman and our Inheritance in Common. I have a copy of it, I can show it to you.
That may be too international to qualify.
Yeah.
That would be the question, not the...
It would also be expensive.
That wouldn't be the issue.
That wouldn't be the issue?
No, the issue would be whether it... no, they don't have to license it, but they usually do. Anyway, nobody's buying these things anymore. They're happy to license it. They get some income from it.
Yeah.
The question I had really had to do with this idea of, is there such a thing? I mean, is it a mistake to dilute any of the international character of music by referring to some of it as music of Jewish experience?
I don't know if I hear Cacciatore it sounds, I mean, it's there. You can deny it, but it's there. Just as it's there in a face and in a mode of speaking, right? Mm-hmm. And I have no desire to deny it. But I have lived both lives, as we mentioned, I mean.
But there's no conflict for you?
No conflict for me at all. When I write Whitman or when I set Hebrew, but I write a different kind of music.